What's up guys, Todd Kelly, Shuswap Outdoors, and today I'm going to show you how to remove the horns from a sheep skull. So it doesn't matter if you're doing a European mount or a taxidermy mount, it's a good idea to remove these horns from the sheep skull and fully clean out that bone section that's underneath the horns here. If you leave it on, there is a chance that bugs will come in over time and eat away at that flesh, causing the horns to fall off. Or if it's a taxidermy mount, that the bugs also eat away at the leather and ruin your mount. It's fairly easy to do. There's a couple different ways of doing it. I'll show you my preferred method. I found the best way is soaking them in water over a few days. It softens up all that flesh, and you just take a couple screwdrivers and peel these things off. This is going to be a wall pedestal, so I'm going to cut the skull here, trim it down, and we're going to throw it into a tub of water here to soak. So I've got my sheep skull capped. This is all we need for taxidermy work. I removed the eyeballs and a bit of the brain that was in there and some of the flesh. We don't have to get too carried away because we are going to boil this skull once the horns are removed and completely clean everything up. You don't have to have these horns completely submerged, but if you have a big bucket and they are, that's fine. We're just looking for this section around here, probably say 6 to 8 inches up the horns, to be wet so they soften up so we can remove the horns. Just a simple tote like this will fit in like this. When we fill it up with clean cold water, it'll completely cover everything that we need. And we're going to dump it out every day just so it doesn't start to stink. And we'll do it for 3 to 4 days here. So I'm going to go fill this up with clean cold water, and we'll get back to showing you after a couple days what the horns look like. I put the horns into the water, and then I realized I missed a step here. We need to drill a few holes from the eye sockets into the horn core, and we'll also do from the brain cavity into the horn core to allow water to get in there. Sheep skulls are very honeycombed, and we want that water to get in there. It'll soak through from the inside out, helping soften everything up and get these horn sheaths off. So a few holes. And from inside the eye socket into it. And that's just going to allow that water to penetrate there. So I'm going to throw these back in the water and let them soak for a few days. I let the horns soak for 4 days, pulled them out, and I think they're ready to work on. First thing we're going to do is a small drill bit the size of a finishing nail, and we're going to drill 2 reference holes in the horns through the skull, and this is just going to help us with realignment when we reattach the horns to the skull plate, so we don't put them on too deep or too shallow. Just a small hole right in the back on both sides. Okay, so what we're going to use to get these things off is a bunch of flathead screwdrivers. And you're just going to work around the edge of the horn and loosen off the areas where the dark horn meets the flesh. And separate it. This one actually wants to come off pretty easy, it looks like here. And the little hole that we got here. There we go. So I got the horn sheath removed. That one came off really easy. Work on the other one here. Oh yeah, there you go. So 4 days of just soaking in water, switching out the water every day. They came off super easy. As I said, I think this is the easiest way by far. The horns don't smell at all, like you get when you macerate them in a bag or whatever. Really easy to do. So for the horns themselves, I'm going to rinse them out with hot water and then dishwashing soap. Let it soak in there. Dissolve any of the fat and grease. Some guys like putting borax in there. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I don't think it's a necessity, but and then we'll let these things air dry after washing them out. Probably take a week. And the horn core, gonna boil this like you do for a normal skull. Just let it simmer for an hour or two, and then we'll get all the flesh off of here and clean it up and let this dry. So, on to the next step. It's been 5 days since the last video. I got the skull cap boiled out and cleaned. It's all dry now. Same with the horns. Hot water, dish soap, let it soak for a couple hours, rinse it out well, let them air dry. They're good to go. When we're reattaching the horns to the skull plate, the one thing I like to do, we get some lacquer thinner. You can also use white gas or a paint thinner. And we're just going to give the inside of the horns a bit of a wipe down. Make sure that they're completely clean. Just let that air dry here. So one thing some guys like to do is they like cutting the ends of the horn core off, and they say it's to save weight. I don't like doing it personally. You're only saving a couple ounces, and the little flared section here at the end, I like that to get a good mechanical lock with our adhesive to keep these horns on. So I really like that. It gives you lots of surface area for our Bondo to attach inside of the horn. So I like leaving it. You're only saving a couple ounces. You're not going to notice it at all. So Bondo is what we're going to be using. Doesn't matter if it's regular Bondo or this one has the fiberglass chop on it. That's just what I use all the time for other stuff in taxidermy work. So this will work just fine. And we need a good amount per horn. I would say it's probably about the size of a baseball is the amount that we're going to use. And the other thing I like to use is a bit of fiberglass resin. This is just going to thin out our Bondo a little bit more. Let it spread easier. And we'll pour some of this fiberglass resin in here. Probably like a quarter cup's worth, roughly. Mix this with our Bondo really well here. Once we got this mixed up really well, we'll put in some hardener, cream hardener, and a few squirts of just a liquid hardener. And give this a really good mix. Just a bit more. So as I said earlier, I really like focusing on this area. just a good area to get a good mechanical lock. The inside of the horn is shaped the exact same way as this is kind of feathered here, so it's a good spot to focus on. We don't want these things falling off. We don't need to coat the entire horn with the Bondo. Like I said, I like to focus on the tip, get a good amount on there. And then around the base. So that's looking pretty good. Just make sure you don't have any Bondo on your fingers here when you're touching the horn. And get that seated. And this is where our little hole that we drilled in the back comes into play as a reference mark to make sure that we seated these properly. I'm just using a little pin here. Push this on, and we can push that pin into that hole. To make sure we have it seated down properly. You don't want it too deep or not deep enough. Obviously, if you're doing a European mount, I would use less Bondo. Since this is going to be a mount, I'm going to have the skull cap is going to be covered anyways. That's looking pretty good there. That's looking pretty good. You said we got our pin here held in the back to make sure that we got it on far enough here. And there you go. We'll let this set up and then we can work on the other side here. But that's how you remove sheep horns and reattach them. Really easy to do. I think this is the best way to do it. Really quick, doesn't smell or anything like that. So anyways, if you have any questions or comments, throw those on down below. I always check the comment section. Hit the thumbs up. That really helps the channel get seen by more people. And hit the subscribe if you're into more fishing, hunting, taxidermy, and outdoor stuff. Anyways, thanks for watching.